First warning, MMA Report is joined live by chosen few athlete Eazy Polizzi. Alex, thanks for taking some time out and talking with us tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into MMA and specifically how you ended up at the chosen few gym.
Well, anyone who's kind of researched on my background is I started with a heavy wrestling background, and after wrestling ended, and I realized that was no longer going to continue for me. I started keeping working out and running and lifting, but after combat sports for a little bit, and you try to go tone things down to something just like running and lifting, it doesn't have the same sort of challenge. And I decided, like, hey, I know a lot of other fighters got their start by wrestling, so maybe I could give that a go. And I looked at some places, and eventually, after looking in the Madison area and figuring out who was running big shows and where I could eventually fight in a big cage in front of a bunch of people, I landed on chosen few. So
You kind of literally just hit on my next question. I said, you had an amazing wrestling career at Beloit Memorial and then at Northwestern. At what point in time did you say to yourself, I think I'm going to try this MMA thing?
um, it was actually a little bit later. I didn't really um, get into it until probably near the end of my career as far as wrestling goes. Um, Anyone who's watched some of my wrestling has seen that I'm a little I'm not the most technical. So sometimes things go a little unorthodox, and some of the more moves that I was successful with were the things that, to put it bluntly, hurt the other guy a little bit more. And so I figured that with my specific kind of wrestling style, that might translate well into mixed martial arts, where hurting guys is kind of the key.
That makes sense. So when I go to your fights and I see you walk out the back, you look you look angry, you look pissed. Do you still get the nerves going into the fights, or is that kind of subsided now that you've been in it for a while?
I talk with people a lot about this because there's one thing that a coach really can't teach you, and that's how to deal with those nerves. They can tell you what works for them. They can give you all sorts of techniques, but really it comes down to you figuring out what works for you. And nerves, I think that I still get them. I still get them, and I think that if you're not nervous, if you're not feeling that adrenaline coming on you before a fight, you're not ready. You're not ready to fight somebody because maybe in other sports it's a little different, but you know when you're in a cage, it's you versus another guy. I mean, those nerves is preparing you for fight or flight, and you know the cage
Right.
closes, so flight's out the window.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You're a perfect 5-0 as a professional, undefeated as an amateur. What do all finishes? What do you attribute your success to?
I mean, I feel like I go back to it a lot, but it's the wrestling. I'm able to not only has built my athleticism and kind of my base for combat sports, but what I tell people a lot is, I mean, other disciplines can teach you how to fight from a place, like jujitsu. If you're on the ground, you know how to take somebody on the ground. You know how to get on top of them. You know how to roll around them. You know how to finish. Boxing, jujitsu. I mean, boxing and Thai. You're up top. You're fighting. You're striking. You're keeping good distance. But wrestling is about knowing where to control. Where's you're gonna make the match happen, because wrestling's all about control. So
Right.
if you can take somebody from their feet to their back, great. Now I put them into maybe a position they don't want to be in. If I get taken down, wrestling is about, getting back up.
Right.
So I'm controlling where the fight happens, and I mean that's the first step of any battle, is making sure that they're fighting on your terms.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're coming off what I think is your biggest victory of your career in FFC in Las Vegas. I was there live to see it. It was a dominant victory, an impressive victory over a tough UFC veteran in Daniel Jolly. What do you take away from that fight, and what were your thoughts, when you left the cage or left the ring that night?
Firstly, very appreciative that you were there because there was lots of people that wanted to watch it, and I think yours was the only video that was filling that niche.
No problem. It was an honor.
Secondly, thoughts from that fight. He was a tough opponent. We found some things that we need to work on. We're coming together with our striking, making sure that it's becoming clearer now. In terms of anyone who's followed light heavyweight, I'm on the shorter end of that spectrum, and making sure that we're utilizing that to the best of our abilities. And in terms of, a lot of people talk where it is for your career, but I'm all about the fight that's about to happen. So we were excited. I was happy to go out there and fight for FFC and get on a bit of a bigger stage and a better opponent. But now that it's over, it's just another win, something that we can learn from, build our experience, and let's move on to the next one.
Yeah. Tell us about your next fight. It's December 6th. It's in Canada. I believe it's your first time fighting in Canada. What do you know about your opponent, and have you been watching any film on him?
All right. You kind of named about just about everything that I know about this next fight. And that's typical for me. And I know one that it might lead into some other questions, but typically when I'm fighting, watching too far ahead and studying film, I know there's guys that are very good at it, and they study their opponents and they know what they're going to do and how they're going to react to it. But the way I approach it is I don't have to, he has to fight me. So if there's going to be film watch, he's going to watch it on me. I want to control the pace. I want to do what I do best. And if he has to adjust his game to me, that's one thing. I'm not really going to adjust to him. I'm gonna do what I do. I know what I do best, and I'm gonna force that will upon him.
So it's almost as if you're not really concerned with what he's doing. You just want to concentrate on what you're going to do in the fight.
It's when you put it like that, it makes me sound like I don't care what he's got. But it's more of a. It's just. I think that sometimes people who study it, well, people who are bad at studying the film, they change their fight game each time. And I know if I watch too much film, my fight game will change. I'll change the way I move. I'll change what I'm doing, and I don't want to be caught up doing things that I've been practicing just for fight camp versus things that I've known work for me my whole career.
Right.
So,
right. That's understandable. Where do you see your career going? And I know you're not going to overlook December 6th, but are you a guy that is saying, I want to go to the UFC, or are you going to follow, your teammate Alex and say, PFL is an option, ONE FC, Bellator? Are you one of those, a fighter that says, I want to go where I'm going to get paid the most? It doesn't matter with the promotion. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, career-wise, I get asked this a lot, and people are like, "Oh, where are you thinking about going?" And right now, it's hoping that eventually I can make fighting a full-time career, and whether that's at a PFL or a UFC, I guess that just depends on where the fates take me. But in looking more into it, let's just go through the UFC is obviously the biggest and the most well-known brand, and it'd be awesome to be on a UFC roster. PFL is a little bit newer, and it has that very, especially for long-time MMA fans, it has a more interesting sort of layout in terms of the season and then the postseason. And of course, there's that $1 million tournament that everyone's salivating over.
Right.
And then also a ONE has been an interesting draw because it's a little bit more foreign to Western audiences, but they claim big numbers and they have a lot of disciplined fighters. Um, and I think actually one of the biggest draws for me there and one is they've gone out and said things that are like, we're a little bit more pure sport. I one of my biggest things that I'm bad at in the fight game. I mean, everyone who's watched me knows my stand up isn't that great, but what's worse than that is my ability to market myself and trash talk. And I think sometimes that gets a little bit highlighted in UFC fights, whereas I think over in one it's not as emphasized. Where where I think maybe I would be a little bit better over there. But Ben Askren, one of the best trash talkers, still got his start in one. So maybe there's a little bit more to it than I'm aware.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take, and I think that's an honest take, to be honest with you. I think one also has a very interesting weight cut system, right, where you can't gain a certain amount of weight back, so guys are forced to fight closer to their natural weight class. If my understanding is correct?
From what I've heard, and again, I'm kind of outside. I haven't been involved with it, but from what I've heard, it's similar to how, again, pulling back to wrestling, how the NCAA manages weight cuts for their wrestlers, with hydration tests and pinch tests and making sure that you can't fall below a certain percentage. Because, yeah, so I think, and I think actually that's what I've heard. And then I've also heard that they had a little bit of problem with that in the past, people getting hurt from weight cuts and all that. And interesting.
Yeah. So tell us how's training going? Are you kind of dialing it down now? How's training going?
Few weeks out, we're going strong. I mean, and at Chosen Few, I'm getting ready. We got guys with fights on the back burner. We'll be putting on a show in January. And I'm sure you heard Gilpin got his call back, so he'll be fighting December 31st. So everybody's getting ready and helping out with it where they can. We got a lot of people in the gym. I mean, we got a lot of guys that are ready to compete. We also have a lot of guys that maybe haven't competed yet, but are crucial in the training process. For me personally, it's going great. I'm just making sure I'm working out. I've always been, speaking of weight cuts, I've always been a little bit light. So I'm not cutting 20, 30 pounds.
Right.
Good for me. I still get to eat a couple weeks out, so it's been good.
I asked Biggie Rhodes this question earlier. If a 195-pound weight class was to open, was that something you'd be interested in going after, or do you like 205?
I like 205. I think 95 would help balance my kind of short stature for 205. It wouldn't be something I would turn my nose up against. Definitely could see myself fighting at 195.
Okay. One thing I hear from other fighters that have never met you before is they say, man, that guy is so intense. That guy is so scary. But you're also one of the nicest and funniest guys that I've personally ever met.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Is it true that you used to have a shirt that said 1 in 14 teenagers has herpes, get tested? And if so, where's that t-shirt at?
The statistic was 1 in 4.
Okay, 1 in 4.
Which 1 in 4 seems a bit harsh. 1 in 4 does seem like, because I mean I wore it around in high school, and it's just, I don't know, man. But maybe. Since then, I mean, I was about 170 when I was wearing that shirt. I don't think it fit me anymore. So lost it a while ago, but I'm always on the lookout for a good shirt. for a good out of place shirt, something that says I found this in a thrift store and there's only 2 of them.
Right. Another thing I heard, were you seriously at one point in time considering a career as in the NASCAR pit crew?
So I did end up going out to North Carolina, and there's a pit team crew combine that they run. Um,
Okay.
from what I was told, back in the 90s, NASCAR realized that hiring the guys who work with engines to change the tires on the car and do that very quickly was kind of difficult
Right.
because, gearheads maybe not be the most athletic guys. What they realized is that there's a ton of college athletes who maybe didn't make it to the NFL, maybe didn't make it to MLB, and actually a lot of guys who don't make it to the Olympics for wrestling. And what they found is, in the pit crew, it's just a quick little movement. It's a quick little movement, just like, you teach any athlete. It's a quick little movement here. You do this. And so it was a lot easier to teach athletes to have one little bit of mechanical aptitude than to teach mechanics not. We went out, we did the combine, we got a bunch of stuff tested. I had a great time. I changed some tires in front of cars that were going 60 miles an hour. Got to run in front of them and throw a tire on.
Okay.
Actually, they did offer me a spot, and upon contemplation, I had my girlfriend ask me, okay, so you say you do this, you'd be a pro athlete. Is this the kind of pro athlete you want to be?
Okay.
And I thought, I don't get to hit people, so I'll see if we can find something else.
Yeah, I think you made a good choice. I think your future is extremely bright. I think you're going to go very far in the sport. Tell the fans at home right now where they can find you on social media, and then give a shout out to some of your sponsors.
Oh, holy moly. I'm still trying to get behind the social media stuff. You can look me up at Alex Eazy Polizzi on Facebook, Eazy Polizzi on Instagram. I think there's a Twitter out there that I'm not so good at using.
Okay.
Still figuring that one out. But sponsors that have helped me along the way, The Rock Bar and Grill in Beloit has been helping me since the get-go. Kern's Motor Car, actually, after that big snap freeze last year, it killed my Jeep.
Ooh.
My engine just died during that negative 30-degree weather.
Yeah.
And they hooked me up, and I got a new Chevy Malibu I'm driving around in.
Nice.
Alpha Tile and Stone has been helping me, as well as Madison Family Wellness here in Madison. If you can't tell from the title, they do acupuncture. I'm a big believer. Get lots of needles stuck in me. I hurt a lot. The needles help.
Yeah.
JMR Engineering Solutions in Beloit, Turtle Tap, and then of course I gotta throw a shout out to my gym, Chosen Few, Josh and all the coaches there. I wouldn't be sitting where I am today without those guys, as well as my teammates helping me out and putting up with me trying to hurt them all the time.
Well, Alex, we appreciate your time a lot, and good luck on December 6th.
I appreciate it, Peter.
You bet.